Most traders think the night they want to quit is the night they failed. That's the belief keeping people stuck. The idea that the urge to close the platform for good means the system didn't work, or worse, that they don't have what it takes. Here's what nobody tells you. That moment isn't a verdict. It's a diagnostic. Wanting to quit doesn't tell you whether to stop. It tells you which of three very different problems you're actually facing, and most traders never slow down long enough to find out which one. They just react. They either walk away from something that was working, or they grind through something that was quietly telling them to change. By the end of this, you'll know exactly how to read that moment when it comes, because it will come, and instead of it ending your trading, it'll be the thing that finally starts it. Ryan didn't fix his trading by finding a better setup. He fixed it by finally asking who he actually was when the pressure hit. That question is where most traders stop. It shouldn't be, because once you accept that the market is showing you yourself, a much bigger question opens up. If the market is a mirror, what exactly is it supposed to be reflecting back? Most traders never answer that. They copy a strategy from someone whose entire personality is different from theirs, and then they wonder why it feels like wearing someone else's skin every time they sit down to trade. A methodical, patient analyst forces themselves into 5-minute scalping because a YouTube thumbnail told them that's where the money is. A naturally impulsive risk-taker tries to force themselves into slow, multi-week swing trades because a mentor said, that's the disciplined way to do it. Neither of them fails, because the strategy is bad. They fail because the strategy is a stranger. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. You already have proof that you can be great at something. Somewhere in your life, in sports, in business, in relationships, in a hobby you took seriously, there is a version of you who already displayed real mastery. Maybe you were the kid who could read a room in 10 seconds and knew exactly what to say. Maybe you built a small business from nothing through sheer stubborn persistence. Maybe you were the athlete who stayed calm in the final seconds when everyone else was panicking. Those are not unrelated life facts sitting in a drawer somewhere. Those are your signature strengths. And they are supposed to be the raw material your trading identity is built from, not something you set aside the moment you open a chart. Think about what actually happens when a trader ignores this. Someone with a naturally fast, intuitive, high-energy processing style, the kind of person who thrives on quick decisions and instant feedback, gets told that real traders are patient long-term investors. So they force themselves to hold positions for weeks, and every single day that trade is open, they are fighting their own nervous system. They check the chart 40 times because stillness feels unbearable to them. Eventually they break the trade early, not because the setup failed, but because their personality was never built for that time frame in the first place. Then they call themselves undisciplined. They are not undisciplined. They are mismatched. Now flip it. Someone with a deep, methodical, research-driven mind, the kind of person who was always the one reading the manual while everyone else was guessing, tries to force themselves into fast scalping because it looks exciting and profitable online. They don't have time to do what they're actually good at, which is deep analysis. They're reacting on instinct they were never trained to trust, in a time frame that punishes exactly the kind of careful thinking that is their real advantage. They blow through their edge in real time and walk away thinking trading isn't for them, when in reality, scalping was never for them. Trading might still be. This is why the fix is not another indicator. The fix is an honest inventory. What have you already proven you're good at, outside of markets entirely? If you've spent years in negotiation or sales, you likely already have a trained sense for reading pressure and hesitation, which translates directly into reading order flow and market sentiment. If you've spent years as an athlete, or in any performance discipline that rewarded composure under a time limit, that same nervous system regulation is exactly what a fast-moving market demands. If your whole life has been built around patient, long-range thinking, chess, engineering, research, writing, that same patience is a genuine edge in position trading, not a weakness to be trained out of you. The point is not that one style is superior. The point is that your existing wiring should choose your trading style instead of a trading style trying to rewire you from scratch. This reframes the entire idea of what finding your edge even means. Most traders think edge is a secret formula hiding somewhere in a course they haven't bought yet. It isn't. Edge is the intersection between a real statistical advantage and a process you can actually execute without fighting your own nature every single day. A brilliant strategy that conflicts with your personality will get sabotaged slowly, trade by trade, until it looks like the strategy failed. A mediocre strategy that fits who you already are will get executed with a consistency that eventually makes it excellent. Consistency is the multiplier, and consistency is nearly impossible when you're trading against your own signature strengths instead of through them. There's a reason this gets skipped so often, and it's not laziness. It's that most trading education is built to sell a single system to as many people as possible, and a system that adapts to your personality doesn't scale the same way a one-size-fits-all course does. It's far easier to sell the only strategy you'll ever need than it is to sell, here's how to figure out who you already are, and build from there. But easier to sell doesn't mean easier to execute. A generic strategy sold to 10,000 different personalities will only ever genuinely fit a small fraction of them, and the rest spend months or years wondering what's wrong with their execution, when the honest answer is that the execution was never the problem. The fit was. So before you touch another setup, ask the uncomfortable question. Not what's the best strategy, but what have I already proven I'm capable of, and where does that show up on a chart? That answer is sitting there. Most traders just never bothered to look for it because they were too busy looking for someone else's system to copy. If this is the first time you're hearing trading psychology explained like this, that alone tells you something about where you've been getting your information. This channel exists to keep going deeper than the surface-level content that got you stuck in the first place. So if that's useful to you, subscribing and turning on notifications means you don't miss the next breakdown, and hitting like helps this reach the traders who are exactly where Ryan was that Tuesday night. Now, back to the mirror, because knowing your signature strength is only half the equation. The other half is what you do the moment your own mind turns against you. Because it will. No matter how well matched your strategy is to your personality, there will be a moment, usually after a loss, sometimes after several, when a voice shows up in your head and it does not sound supportive. It sounds like an old, familiar critic. You always do this. You're never going to be consistent. You knew this would happen. That voice feels like the truth because it's using your own internal narrator's voice. But it is not neutral analysis. It is cognitive relapse, your nervous system trying to drag you back into the exact same broken pattern by convincing you that pattern is simply who you are. Most trading education tells you to handle this the same way you'd handle any negative thought. Calmly, rationally, journal it out, breathe, move on. And in a classroom that works fine. In the middle of a live trade with real capital on the line, staring down a loss, calm, rational reflection is often too slow and too weak to interrupt a spiral that's already gaining speed. You need something with enough force to actually break the pattern in the moment it's happening, not 20 minutes later, when you've already revenge traded your account into the ground. This is where a much more aggressive internal move comes in, and it works specifically because it uses emotional intensity instead of avoiding it. The next time that self-sabotaging voice shows up, you always blow it, you're going to lose it all. You don't gently disagree with it. You picture that voice as coming from someone else entirely, not you. Someone you have zero patience for, someone who has no right to be talking to you like that. And you respond the way you actually would to that person, with real heat. Internally, forcefully, you tell that voice exactly where it can go. This isn't about journaling a calm rebuttal. It's about generating enough emotional charge in the opposite direction to physically interrupt the spiral before it takes over your next decision. Why does this actually work when calm reasoning so often fails? Because negative self-talk during a losing streak isn't really a logical argument you can out-debate. It's an emotional pattern, and emotional patterns get overridden by other emotional patterns, not by quiet logic. Anger, real conviction, a flash of internal defiance. These create enough psychological force to snap the loop before it fully closes around you. Traders who only ever respond to this voice with soft, therapeutic language are trying to bring a whisper to a fight that's already loud. The traders who break the pattern permanently are the ones who learn to meet that internal voice with something equally intense, until eventually the voice stops showing up with the same authority it used to have. Picture the trader who just took their third loss in a row. exactly like Ryan did that Tuesday. The old pattern says, close the platform, spiral into the story that they're fundamentally broken, maybe revenge trade to try to fix it immediately. The trader who has done this work hears the same voice start up, you always do this, you're going to blow the account. And instead of absorbing it as fact, they catch it in real time, recognize it as the old pattern trying to reassert itself, and internally shut it down hard, not gently, decisively. Then they move to the next task with a clear head instead of a spiraling one. Over time, this rewires which voice actually has authority in your head during pressure. The goal isn't to never hear the doubt again. The goal is that when it shows up, it no longer gets to drive. This is not the same thing as suppression, and that distinction matters. Suppression is pretending the loss doesn't hurt, burying the frustration somewhere it'll resurface later as a bigger, less controlled outburst. This is the opposite. It's fully feeling the intensity of the moment and then deliberately aiming that intensity at the false narrative instead of at yourself or your next trade. The emotion isn't the problem. Where it gets pointed is the problem. A trader who never lets themselves feel anything becomes numb and detached, and a numb trader misses the signals their own body is giving them. A trader who lets the emotion run the show unchecked becomes reactive and impulsive. The traders who last learn to use the emotion as fuel for the internal fight against the old pattern, instead of fuel for the next bad decision. But interrupting the negative pattern is only defense. What actually builds lasting confidence is offense, and this is where most traders' journaling habits are quietly working against them without them realizing it. Almost every trading journal in existence is a mistake log. Entry was late, stop was too tight, sized up emotionally, missed the exit. Every single entry is a documented failure, day after day, week after week. And here's what that does over time. Even if the analysis inside it is completely accurate, it trains your brain to associate trading with an endless list of your own shortcomings. Imagine a child who only ever hears from a parent what they did wrong, never once hears what they did right. That child doesn't become more disciplined. They become anxious, defensive, and eventually they stop trying entirely, because trying only ever seems to produce criticism. Most traders are doing that exact thing to themselves, every single night, in a notebook they think is helping them improve. The fix isn't to stop reviewing mistakes. It's to add something that's almost completely absent from typical trading journals. A deliberate, disciplined record of what you did correctly. And this matters most, not on your winning days, but on your losing ones. Because on a losing day, there is still almost always something you executed well. You sized the position correctly, even though the trade lost. You respected your stop instead of moving it, even though it stung. You skipped a mediocre setup you would have taken 6 months ago. That is real evidence of growth, sitting right there in the same session as the loss, and if you never write it down, you never let it count. Every day, find one specific thing you did well, and be precise about it. Not I did okay today, but I held my size discipline on the Eurust short, even after being down for the day, and then follow it with exactly how you're going to repeat that tomorrow. This becomes a compounding record. You are quite literally building the case file for the trader you're becoming, using your own actual behavior as the evidence, instead of only ever building the case file for the trader you're afraid you are. This is why it's called reverse engineering success, instead of just positive thinking. You're not manufacturing confidence out of nothing. You're mining it directly from your own trading data, the same data you were already collecting, just filtered through a different lens. Most traders think confidence has to come first, before the good decisions. In reality, confidence built this way is the byproduct of decisions you've already proven you can make, documented in your own handwriting, which makes it far harder to argue with than a motivational quote ever could be. There's a practical reason this matters more than it sounds. When the next inevitable losing streak hits, and it will, a trader with only a mistake log has nothing to reach for except more evidence of their own failure, which accelerates the exact spiral this entire process is trying to prevent. A trader with weeks or months of documented "what I did right" entries has something concrete to stand on instead. Not a feeling, not a hope, an actual record. That record becomes the thing you reread on the night you're tempted to quit. The same kind of night Ryan sat through with no evidence of his own competence anywhere in front of him, because he'd never once written any of it down. Now, here's the part that connects everything so far. None of this, the identity work, the pattern interrupt, the confidence log, becomes permanent through insight alone. Insight is cheap. Ryan had plenty of insight sitting in his apartment that Tuesday night, and insight alone didn't change his account balance the next morning. What changes an account balance is repetition, sustained long enough that a behavior stops requiring willpower and simply becomes what you do. This is where a single, narrow commitment matters more than an entire library of trading knowledge. Pick exactly one part of your process, just one: sizing consistency, respecting your stop without moving it, waiting for full confirmation before entering, and commit to tracking that single behavior every single day for 90 consecutive days. Not 90 days of generally trying to trade better, 90 days of measuring one specific thing. The reason this works where vague self-improvement fails is that most trading flaws aren't actually knowledge problems. Ryan knew his rules. He'd read the books, watched the videos, kept a journal with over 300 entries. His problem was never information. His problem was that under real pressure, with real money on the line, 3 months of theoretical knowledge lost to years of ingrained emotional habit almost every time. 90 days of deliberate, tracked repetition is what it actually takes to reverse that ratio, to make the disciplined response the automatic one instead of the effortful one. Somewhere around day 30, most traders quit this. It feels tedious. It feels like nothing is changing, because a single skill in isolation doesn't feel dramatic day to day, and the losses that inevitably still happen along the way feel like proof it isn't working. Sound familiar? It should. This is the second signal from earlier, doing the right thing without yet having the sample size to prove it. The 90-day rule is the practical container for that exact principle. You don't judge it at day 10 or day 30. You judge it at day 90. When the behavior that used to require conscious effort every single time has quietly become the thing you do without thinking about it at all. That's not a motivational milestone. That's neurological. Sustained repetition is what actually moves a skill from effortful to automatic, and there is no shortcut around the 90 days that gets you there any faster. Here's something almost no trading course will tell you, because it doesn't sound like trading advice at all. The traders who last, the ones with real longevity, almost never have trading as the only significant thing in their life. And this isn't a coincidence. And it isn't just about avoiding burnout in some vague wellness sense. It has a direct, measurable effect on decision quality. When trading is your only source of identity and meaning, every single loss doesn't just cost you money. It costs you your sense of self for that day. A red account becomes a referendum on your worth, and a green account becomes the only thing making you feel okay. That is an enormous, unstable weight to place on something as inherently uncertain as the market, and it's exactly the kind of pressure that produces the emotional trading Ryan kept falling into. When your entire emotional state is downstream of your P&L, you will chase, you will revenge trade, you will hold too long hoping for the number that finally lets you feel like yourself again. Now picture a trader who has real, substantive weight in other parts of their life, relationships that matter to them, physical training they take seriously, a hobby or a pursuit they'd care about even if trading didn't exist. A bad trading day for that person is still a bad day, but it isn't existential. Their sense of self isn't hanging entirely off the next candle close. And here's the part that surprises people. That stability doesn't just protect their mental health, it actually improves their trading decisions. A regulated nervous system sees a chart more clearly than a desperate one. A trader who isn't emotionally starving for this trade to work is far more capable of calmly letting it go when it doesn't meet the criteria, and far more capable of sizing correctly instead of doubling down out of need. This means the non-negotiable calendar blocks for training, for relationships, for whatever genuinely restores you, aren't a break from your trading process. They are part of your trading process, in the same way your stop loss is. If it's not scheduled with the same seriousness as your trading hours, it quietly gets treated as optional, and the first thing to get sacrificed under stress is always whatever wasn't protected on the calendar. Protect it the same way you protect your risk management, because functionally, that's exactly what it is. There's one more myth left to dismantle, and it might be the most stubborn one, because it's wrapped in the language of independence and self-reliance. The image of the lone trader, alone at a desk, figuring everything out through sheer isolated willpower, answering to no one. It sounds disciplined. It sounds like strength. In practice, it is one of the most common reasons traders stay stuck for years longer than they need to. No serious performance discipline anywhere in the world develops this way. A surgeon doesn't train alone in a room with no supervision, learning purely through their own trial and error on live patients. A professional athlete doesn't build their game in total isolation with no coach, no film review, no teammates pushing them. Every high-performance field on Earth uses structured feedback loops, other people watching, correcting, and accelerating what would otherwise take a single person years to figure out alone through blind repetition. Trading somehow convinced an entire generation that it's the one skill where isolation is a virtue instead of a massive handicap. Ryan sat in his apartment that Tuesday night completely alone, with no mentor, no trading friends, having started the entire road by himself. That isolation didn't make his breakdown noble. It made it slower and lonelier than it needed to be, and it's a huge part of why it took him this long to even ask the right question. A trader inside a real accountability structure, even an informal one, gets a version of that same breakdown moment reflected back to them by someone else, often before it fully happens. Someone in that circle notices a pattern in your journal you'd been blind to in your own data. Someone shares a mistake they made so you don't have to pay full tuition for the identical one. This doesn't require joining an expensive mastermind or a formal firm. It requires actively rejecting the idea that trading alone equals trading correctly, and instead building even a small, honest circle, 2 or 3 serious traders who review each other's process, not just each other's wins. Each one teaches one. You bring your signature strengths, they bring theirs, and the blind spots that are nearly invisible from inside your own head become obvious from the outside almost immediately. Isolation didn't protect Ryan from his own patterns. It just made sure no one was there to catch them until the account had already paid the price. There's a specific reason this compounds faster than solo study ever could. When you learn purely from your own mistakes, you're limited to the speed of your own losses, one account, one set of experiences, one narrow window of market conditions. When you're inside even a small, honest group, you're effectively borrowing years of other people's tuition without having to pay for all of it yourself. Someone else's blown trade because they ignored correlation risk becomes a lesson you get for free before it costs you the same amount it cost them. That's not a shortcut in the sense of skipping the work. It's a multiplier on how fast the work actually teaches you something. Put all of this together, and a very different picture of trading mastery starts to form, one that has almost nothing to do with finding a magic setup, and almost everything to do with who you're building yourself into while you use it. Your signature strengths tell you which game you're actually built to play. The pattern interrupt keeps the old voice from hijacking you mid-trade. The confidence log gives you real evidence instead of borrowed motivation. The 90 days turns a single fragile insight into something automatic. The life outside the platform keeps your nervous system regulated enough to actually execute all of it. And the people around you catch what you can't see alone. None of this fixes anything on its own. It's a system, the same way a trading strategy is a system, and skipping pieces of it produces the same result as skipping pieces of a strategy. Slow, confusing failure that looks like bad luck but isn't. A trader who nails their signature strength but never builds the 90-day repetition will still relapse under pressure. A trader who masters the pattern interrupt but stays completely isolated will still take years longer to see their own blind spots than they needed to. Each piece covers a gap the others leave open, which is exactly why treating this as a checklist to sample from, instead of a structure to build in full, is how so many traders end up right back at the version of that Tuesday night they thought they'd already moved past. Ryan changed the question that Tuesday night from, "Should I quit?" to, "What is this moment actually telling me?" Everything covered here is what happens after you've asked that question honestly, and you're finally ready to build the trader who doesn't have to ask it again. Most people click something like this thinking they're about to get one more strategy tweak, a better indicator, a stricter rule, something external to bolt onto the trading they're already doing. That's what fixing trading has always meant to them. What actually became clear is that none of that was ever the real lever. The moment you want to quit isn't a verdict on your strategy, it's a mirror on your identity. And the traders who last aren't the ones who found a better setup, they're the ones who matched their trading to who they already are, learned to talk back to the voice that shows up under pressure, kept a record of what they did right instead of only what they did wrong, gave one change 90 days before judging it, and stopped trying to do any of this alone in a dark room at 6 p.m. None of that is exciting. It won't feel like a breakthrough the day you start it. But it's the difference between circling back to that same Tuesday night every few months and actually walking through it once and coming out the other side. You don't need to act on all of this tonight. Just sit with the one piece that landed hardest. That's usually the one that was already true about you. If you're not sure how to start separating what I did wrong from what I did right in your own trades, that's exactly what a structured daily review template is for. It gives you the 2 questions to ask every session so you're not reinventing the format from scratch. I'll drop the one I use in the description if you want a reference point instead of building it from zero.